Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next The Rise of Kyoshi chapter analysis. This one's going to be for chapter 14, which is called The Introduction. So this is a longer chapter than the previous two in that it's an important chapter again. We get introduced to the characters that Kyoshi's going to be with for pretty much the rest of the book here. The people she's going to be interacting with and effectively, getting her training from. And the main, I suppose, core of this chapter is explaining now, okay, what connections are they using to meet these people, and then who are these people? The interesting thing here is we're going to learn a lot about, Kyoshi's parents. Not everything right in this chapter, but a good amount in this chapter, and that's what happens. They go to this place that's explained to them by the journal. This is all being guided through Kyoshi's mother, who wrote the journal, and the whole idea of her parents being Daofei smugglers, and they have these connections, and Kyoshi's planning to use these connections to get training from, I suppose, effectively the underworld, effectively the other side of the coin here. Not the law and the nobility, but the Daofei smugglers, the kind of other side of society, basically. And it's effectively her going into this place and meeting up with her mother's old crew, trying to get them to help her. That's the core of this chapter, but let's get into the details here. The start is another Kyoshi sort of a nightmare, but it starts out as just a dream. It says here, Kyoshi struggled to open a small metal box. She'd opened the visible latch, yes, but no matter how hard she gripped and twisted the container, the false bottom that concealed the true contents wouldn't budge. You can't force it, a gentle voice said. Use too much strength and it's liable to break. The goods would spill everywhere. Do you want to leave a trail behind, do you? You don't want to leave a trail behind. Kyoshi looked up from the floor to see a tall, beautiful woman with freckles splashed across the tops of her cheeks and the serpent tattoos running down her arms. Next to her was a man, stocky and strong, his face bedecked in red and white makeup. The streaks of crimson met each other to form a wild, animalistic pattern, but his expression underneath was warm and mirthful. So that is the first description that we've got of Kyoshi's parents. Now, we've heard that description of Kyoshi's mother before, the serpent tattoos, but also it directly confirms to us again the similarities of Kyoshi and her mother. They both have freckles. They're both very tall. But it also explains to us that, at least from Kyoshi's memory, she associates the makeup, which she said was her mother's, also with her father. So it relates to sort of the smuggling group that they're with and the way they did things, and that the white and red makeup is signature to their group and signature to both of her parents. But that's just an interesting one. The reason it turns into a nightmare is because it explains here. The painted man wiped his face, and in the streaks between the colors, his features had turned into Jianzu's. And it's just the idea that, in a way, it signifies, the previous thing she hated the most, her parents, morphing into the thing she actually hates the most now, which is Jianzu. But she's going to have to use the connection of her parents to, be able to take him out. So this is where we get, obviously, what they've decided upon, Rangi and Kyoshi, and that is to use this support structure from her mother to make all of this happen. They reveal later on in the chapter, but it's important to have now. Kyoshi has told Rangi at this point the history of her parents and stuff like that. So at this point, Rangi knows, and that's why it feels like sort of off-screen we actually got the decision that they come to, but that's what they're doing. They're looking for Madame Kiji's tea house. And again, we've heard that mentioned before from the guy back in chapter 7, the iceberg, who tried to hit on Kyoshi by thinking that it was actually Kyoshi's mother. He mentioned, have you ever been to Madame Kiji's tea house? So it's also in the journal, and that's where they're going, with the idea that this is a typical kind of meeting spot for this group of Daofei. So they have to hide Peng Peng, of course, because they note that Jianzu would be on the lookout for any group that is not with an airbender that has a sky bison. That would be a very easy way to find them, so they hide Peng Peng away and walk into town. They're at Chameleon Bay here, so this is revealing where the tea house is. It's in Chameleon Bay, which we've of course seen before. I think the guru, when Sokka went to meet his father, that's where they were kind of camped out on that beach there near Chameleon Bay. So it's a place we sort of know about, but we obviously didn't get to see anything more than just this kind of beach area. But it gets across the idea as they walk into town here that it's a very, very poor location, and they note that the ground is not really suited to grow anything. The people are suffering from malnutrition and sickness, and Rangi is struggling with this. People shouldn't live like this, and Kyoshi's more used to it, and this is where Rangi reveals that she knows about Kyoshi's past, like living on the streets and stuff like that. I know about the time you spent in Yokoya on your own before Master Kelsang took you in, even though you tried to hide it from me. Auntie Mui told me, and she says, Kyoshi, you should never have been put through that experience. The thought of the other villagers ignoring you when you needed them, it makes me sick. That's why I was always pushing you to fight back. And Kyoshi just says, what was I supposed to do? Drop the mountain on them, smack around a bunch of children half my size? Anything I did would have been completely disproportionate. Anyway, is the Fire Nation so perfect that prosperity gets shared with every citizen? No, but maybe one day it could be. And I like that. I like the two of them talking about this, and like Rangi's aware that sort of Kyoshi is having to like delve into her past and bring all this stuff back up. And as they're walking through this place, it's like Kyoshi has experienced this before. She knows what this is like. Rangi hasn't, because she comes from the Fire Nation, which is more prosperous because it's not as big, and the leadership actually has a influence on much more of the country. And the setup here, but maybe one day it could be, I think what it's referring to is effectively where the Fire Nation is going to get to by the time Sozin comes into power. And he feels at that point the Fire Nation is prosperous enough to potentially even spread it beyond the Fire Nation. That's what starts Sozin. And I think this is just a little hint, a little reference to the growing, prosperity in the Fire Nation, and I like that. I like that little connection. That's a tease of kind of something that's to come. Something that's obviously going to be more than 250 plus years away at this point, but we'll get there. So anyway, so they walk over to the tea house. They walk by this old guy who ends up actually being a very important character, but we'll get introduced to him by name a little bit later on, and then even later on than that in the coming chapters, the importance of him, even though he almost comes across as being kind of almost the least important member of the group here, the crew, the former crew that they're about to meet. So they walk in here. They do give the guy some money because he seems really old and like disheveled and stuff like that. So they give him some money to get something to eat, and they walk past him. They sit down in a very specific spot at a very specific table. There's a pie show table there. And they basically wait to be asked the question. These are the instructions they're following from the journal. So a boy comes over to them. They note he's wearing kind of head wraps in the style of the Siwang tribes. So we find out that this character, right at this point, he's from the Siwang Desert. So that's interesting. He asks them, what would you like to drink? And this is where Kyoshi recites the line like she's meant to. Jasmine picked in fall, scented at noon, and steeped at a boil. Such a combination didn't exist, or if it did, it probably would have tasted like liquid disaster. The response to this from the boy is, we have every colored blossom known to man and spirit. Kyoshi replies, red and white will suffice. And this is when he's like, Lao Ji, who did you just let in here? That's the name of the old man. Lao... The name is Lao space Ge. I'm not really sure how to pronounce the second part. It's either Lao Ji, Lao Je, Lao... I'm not really sure. I'm just going to call him Lao or Lao Ji for the sake of just what I have in my mind as the easy way to pronounce it, but it probably is pronounced a little bit differently. But either way, he becomes very important later on. So he gets a scolding from the young boy here of like, why did you let them in? And he's just like, oh, they gave me money. That's why I let them pass me. So he asks them to wait there and goes to get the other members of the gang. And while that's happening, Rangi's still, trying to accept all of this of just like, you told me about like what we're going to do, that we're going to be like Daofei connected, you're going to use the Daofei code, but I can't really believe what's happening in front of me. And Kyoshi says, it's not too late for you to get out of here and save your honor. Rangi says, it's not my honor I'm worried about. And this is going to be an important thing for this chapter and going forward, is Rangi beginning to grow concerned at the way Kyoshi is acting. We're seeing Kyoshi begin to, I suppose, act a little bit more aggressively dangerous, getting herself into situations where she really doesn't have control and just sort of almost looking her way through it. That's how driven she is to get what she needs to take out Jianzhu. That she's not stopping to sort of accept the situation she's in and think things through. Rangi wants Kyoshi to think things through more. She's more shocked that Kyoshi's changing so quick more than anything. Like, it's okay that we're doing this Dao Fei thing, but the way you're handling this, and it'll continue as we go on, but Rangi is just growing concerned at how quickly Kyoshi has changed here. That's important to note. So, this is where the other members of the crew come in. A huge man in his 30s, as tall as Kelsang and half, again, as thick, blotted out the lamplight coming in from the kitchen. He had a smooth, clean-shaven face over a body that threatened to burst from expensive robes. Let's see, it says here, as big as he was, he hadn't made the floorboards creak. So that's a kind of noted thing about him. A young woman stepped out of the room, not caring about the drop that awaited her. She was dressed in an Earth Kingdom tunic, but with a fur skirt over her trousers. A stronger indication of the woman's Water Tribe heritage was also her sapphire blue eyes. So, waterbender as well, and a big guy who seems surprisingly light on his feet. So that's some of the other characters that we get introduced to here. And this is when they basically start accusing Kyoshi and Rangi of being basically part of the police, like lawmen, basically. And they have to try and convince them, like, no, we're not like that. We are Dao Fei, or we want to be Dao Fei. We're not abiders. The word abider will come up a bunch in the book with the idea that the Dao Fei don't agree with the idea of following the laws set forth by the people in power within the Earth Kingdom. This relates to what Jianzhu was saying earlier on about the whole idea of any other nation, the Dao Fei would just be called criminals, and it'd be done deal. In the Earth Kingdom, they're allowed to become such a thing where they have these codes, and they're allowed to really become so idealistic as to believe they're sort of like above the law, and that their personal law means more. That's how little the influence of like Ba Sing Se and all the other big places means for most of the Earth Kingdom in a way. That's the difference about what the Dao Fei is in all of this. So, and he's basically just questioning, it felt like you were reading all of this from an instruction manual, and that's why they sort of feel like, are you part of the police? And he basically reveals all of that. And it's about to get aggressive here, The boy puts a stone down on the table, then he knocks over the table, and it feels like it's about to get really, really intense. Kyoshi makes a brash move here, which ends up sort of working out. Her response to the table being knocked over is to basically just stamp her foot down. And we know Kyoshi can't do anything subtly, so what happens here is that the entire foundation of the tea shop just rises a bit and basically makes the entire tea house jump. It says, the entire foundation of the tea house, the patch of earth it was built on, jumped by half an inch. Everyone basically falls over. And she basically just says, the truth is, I despise Dao Fei. I hate your kind. It makes me sick to be in your presence. You're worse than animals. Rangi begins to grow concerned again at the aggressiveness of Kyoshi. But that doesn't matter right now. You're going to give me everything I demand because you're bound by your outlaw code. You'll do everything as I say because of your idiotic, clownish make-believe traditions. And this is where she slams one of the war fans down at the table, opens it up, and this is what gets her basically in the door here. Not all these other instructions, secret codes and stuff like that. It's this fan, because they recognize it. Lao Ji jumps in and says, "Spirits above, that's Jace's fan." The boy leapt out of his seat. "Where did you get that?" he said. And Kyoshi has to reveal here, "I inherited it from my parents." The Water Tribe girl looked at her with wonder. "You're Jace's daughter. Jasa and Hark were your mother and father." So Jasa is the name of Kyoshi's mother, and Hark is the name of Kyoshi's father. That's Jesa and Haork. So they're her parents' names, which is interesting. And Kyoshi reveals here, "My parents founded this group. They're your bosses." And Lao Ji says, "Our baby has come home. This calls for a drink." And even though it's revealed here, Kyoshi's already told Rangi this whole story. Rangi is still like, yes, she agrees with everyone else. This needs to be explained to me some more. Like, she's still so unable to accept that this story about Kyoshi, like her best friend's past, is true, having seen Kyoshi reveal it all and turn everyone around in this whole thing. It's pretty crazy. So This is where she again brings up, don't you think you played that situation a little aggressively? And she's just like, this is the type of actions these people respect. Tagaka knew we were calm and rational. Look what she tried to do to us. Rangi says that you didn't see yourself back there. It was like you were begging them to attack you. There's being brave and then there's having a death wish. We're not in our element. You might have the keys to certain doors, but this is not our house. You have to be more careful. And Kyoshi just kind of gets a little bit mad here and says, I'm sorry, all right? We'll do it differently. And it's this idea of like, is Rangi getting through to Kyoshi here? Kyoshi just wants to get her training, kill Janzu. She's not really thinking about how much danger she's putting herself in, or how the people close to her think about Kyoshi being put in such danger. So that's the big thing here. But anyway, this is when they all introduce themselves properly to Kyoshi. So the big guy reveals himself to be Flitting Sparrowkeet Wong. The waterbender is revealed to be Kirima, Kirima. Just Kirima. She doesn't have a fancy name or a second name. She just goes by Kirima. The boy, who we've seen talking a lot, he calls himself Bullet Lek, Lek, though some call me Skull Crusher Lek or Lek of the Whistling Death. Now, the reason for those nicknames will be explained, I actually think, a bunch later on. I think they take a while to get around to explaining that nickname, but that's his name. And again, it's important to note, he's from the Siwang Desert and stuff like that. So we have a character who's light on his feet, we have a waterbender, and we have someone from the Siwang Desert who, so that's the situation we have. Kyoshi introduces herself by her name, Kyoshi. This is my associate Rangi. Rangi's a little bit like, oh, we're using real names here, okay. And yeah, she has to reveal her backstory as much as she knows it. I don't know much from when I was little, only that my parents and I never stayed in one place very long, and they never told me where. You could say I grew up in the Earth Kingdom. So this just by itself explains a lot. This explains why Kyoshi was never found when she was younger by the Earth technique of finding the Avatar. She was constantly moving location a lot because her parents were smugglers, so they never stayed in one place for any length of time, and that's why the Earth geomancy method always found a location, but by the time anyone got to that location, there was no one there to be found. Now, there'll be a little bit more revealed about this, about her parents and like the nature of them and stuff like that a little bit later on, that will make it even more clear, I suppose, how they were able to move around so quickly. But for now, that for the most part explains most of it, just Kyoshi moving around, and it also explains a weakness with the Earth method of like, it doesn't account for the fact of like, if the person from the Earth Kingdom doesn't have a stable life, it is constantly moving, so that's interesting. Lao Ji brings a few in piece of information in here because obviously he's been with them from the start because he's so old. That would have been before any of you joined. Jasa and Hark slowed down considerably for several years and barely ran any jobs. They never told me why they stopped gathering the old crew for so long. I thought maybe they'd quit the game. And Kyoshi says, well, they must have wanted back in very badly because they abandoned me in a farming village when I was 5 or 6. I can't be sure exactly when. I never saw them after that. And then to herself she says, or forgave them. Lek actually speaks up at this point and says, that can't be. Jason and Hark would never do that to family. They were the most loyal bosses anyone could ask for. You must be mistaken. And Kirima has to step in and be like, are you telling their own daughter what happened to her? Shut up and let her finish. Now, what's going to happen here is that we're going to see a little bit of a, not rivalry, but just issue develop between Kyoshi and Lek that's going to kind of be in the way of them properly getting along for a while. And it's all over Kyoshi's parents, because effectively we're going to find out Lek effectively looked up to Kyoshi's parents as if they were his own parents. Like, they raised him for a certain amount of his life. And because of that reveal, Kyoshi's going to be a little bit upset / jealous at Lek because apparently her parents were willing to look after him but not her. And he's going to be upset about the fact that Kyoshi just has no respect for her parents because of what happened. And that's going to cause an issue between them all. She just talks about how I nearly died of neglect in the village before I was taken in by the house of a rich and powerful man. That's the John Zeus stuff. And she just explains, I kept my parents' past a secret from the village the entire time. for fear that, she would have been made even more of an outcast if they knew she was the spawn of criminals, as she says here. Then they're like, okay, how does that lead you from there to coming here? And this is what she tells them about the whole craziness that just happened. I did not just decide. The man whose house I lived in decided. When he murdered 2 people dear to me, I swore by the spirits that turned this world on its axis that it would make him pay for it. That's why I'm here. He's too powerful and influential to be brought down by the law, so I need the opposite side of the coin. I need my parents' resources. If they can give me one gift at all in this life, then let it be revenge for those I've lost. This is when Lek has to reveal to her, and it says here, like, solemnly took his head wraps off and wrung them between his hands. You came all this way to find Jasa and Hark. Kyoshi, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to break this to you, but, and it says here, relief came like a monsoon. She did not have to meet them. She didn't have to discover what kind of person she was when the path unearthed itself and took solid form. What, are they dead or something? Kyoshi said, waving her hand at him flippantly. I don't care. A lie. Had they appeared in front of her, she might have had to run screaming from this room. That's a very interesting reaction there. Like, it's explained. I'll read that the next bit as well, actually. We're talking about your mother and father. They were taken by fever 3 years ago. And Kyoshi just says, wow, I guess there's some things you can't outrun, huh? How can you be so vile? No one in the 4 nations disrespects their own kin like that. They left me behind because I took up too much cargo space, so I would say it's family tradition. I really like that back and forth about Kyoshi's response to her parents, and that it's her trying to act like she doesn't care, but deep down it is probably one of the most important things kind of to her in the world because of what happened to her. It's so like defining for her parents abandoning her, that yes, she ultimately feels relief that she doesn't have to interact with them because she doesn't know what would happen if they did just walk into the room. So she's happy that she doesn't have to even think about what probably would have happened. But the fact that they are dead, it isn't that she just doesn't care, but I suppose it's just that fear of what would have happened if they were alive. And I think it's interesting. It's complex kind of feelings from Kyoshi about this whole thing, and there is an element of shock that, like, oh, they are gone. But ultimately for her, they left her, and that's the key thing. That's the main thing that really means anything to her. And again, with the whole thing with Lek, he can't see them that way, and she can't see her parents in the way that Lek sees them, and that's part of their issue. She says, I'm not here to confront my parents or their ghosts. I'm here to seek what's owed to me by blood ties. And she goes on about, like, I want this, 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 and this, everything that I know about from the journal that this group of Dao Fei can offer me. And then that's when they have to explain, like, oh, you're talking about the base here, here, and here. We don't have them anymore. Like, the people in this room, this is the entirety of what's left of the crew, basically. This is the network. It's just these couple of people. And they have to then explain to that, like, yeah, we've fallen on hard times, there's been crackdowns on smuggling across the Earth Kingdom, and we've really suffered, and we're sort of stuck here for now, basically. So everything's kind of going wrong here. The organization that could help Kyoshi isn't getting anywhere. And Rangi's like, oh, we understand, sorry about that. But Kyoshi, we tried, let's go. Rangi just wants to get out of there, but inadvertently reveals we should get back to Peng Peng and fly to the nearest. And that's when it was revealed to everyone. Wait, fly? You have a sky bison? And suddenly they're jumping all over them, like, oh, let's form a partnership. We need to get out of here too. That this is the thing that really gets them, like, oh, we actually may want to help you here, the sky bison. This will help us, get to somewhere where the prospects are better. Kyoshi wants training. We should travel together for a while. It's our best shot at finding an earthbending teacher of ill repute. And yeah, this is when Kyoshi realizes, oh, I've sort of confused things a bit here, because she hasn't revealed to them that she's the Avatar yet here, but she has revealed she's an earthbender. So it's kind of like, how do I go about getting training for the other elements when I want to keep it a secret that I'm the Avatar? So we'll deal with that later on, but for now it's like, okay, earthbending teacher is what she's going to be getting. But anyway, this is when Lao Ji comes in and says, I know it's a tough decision about deciding if we can come with you, but don't take too long. The police are coming. Like, we need to get out of here right now. So, you know, it's just this crazy situation that's just happened. She's met the people, thinks everything's going to go right, finds out her parents are gone, and actually the organization that could have helped her is reduced to just a handful of people. And they don't really have the resources to give her any sort of help like she would have expected. And now it's like, can we come with you on the Sky Bison to somewhere else and maybe help you find somewhere? There's only one decision to be made here in the heat of this moment. It's like, yeah, she's going to have to reveal to them, like, yeah, follow me to the Sky Bison, we'll get out of here and sort something out on the way. And this is Kyoshi's group, basically, for the rest of the book here. And I think it's really good because, like, obviously Lek is the main one who's characterized here, and the sort of issue between him and Kyoshi. Lao Ji is going to be actually very important as more is revealed about him specifically. Like, he just comes across as being like, oh, he's the guy who's been there the longest, but he's just like this drunk old man at this point in time. So what's so important about him? But he is honestly that important to the book. Wong, again, I've read the book already, of course. I don't really remember much specifics about anything particularly notable about Wong as we go through the book. Maybe I've just forgotten a few things, but I think he's probably the least interesting member of this group as far as I can remember. Kirima is interesting because, of course, she's a waterbender, so that sort of makes her unique here. And there's some interesting sort of interactions that happens with her over the course of the book. So we'll get some nice scenes with Kirima. But yeah, Lao Ji is probably the main one. Lek gets some nice moments. But yeah, probably the main character stuff is actually in the middle of all of this. It's still Rangi and Kyoshi, of like Rangi growing concerned at the way Kyoshi's acting, of nearly getting them into a fight the second they meet these people, you know, showing off her earthbending immediately. And I suppose from Rangi's perspective, the idea is like, if you didn't show the fan at that exact moment, they would have attacked us and we would have had to fight our way out. And guess what, Kyoshi? I'm the fighter in the group, not you. Because Kyoshi doesn't have any combat training. She's got power, but any skilled bender is going to be able to take her out because she's got no sort of subtlety or technique at this point. So, you know, pretty interesting stuff here, and especially the reveals about her parents, that they were both smugglers. They ran this pretty successful smuggling organization. That explains a lot about Kyoshi's early childhood and why she was never found, and then why being abandoned at a certain age. And you know, there's still questions, but a lot of answers kind of coming out here, and like getting the names of them, the descriptions of the two characters. It's nice to finally have this after all this time. And just in terms of Kyoshi from the start of the book to Kyoshi now, it is interesting to see the character who claims to hate Dao Fei now going to them for help, hates her parents, but using their organization to try and Kyoshi using her parents' organization and connections to get the training she needs to take out the other person she hates. Like you see it all coming together. Her, you know, you again look at Kyoshi and the legend that is Avatar Kyoshi, and so much of her look is aspects of things that the character of Kyoshi kind of hates. She doesn't like her parents, but she's using the items from her mother. Doesn't like her father, but is using the sort of paint that she remembers him wearing the most. Doesn't like Jianzhu, but is wearing the armor that he gave her, basically. That sort of stuff is where this book succeeds so well. It's those little connections of that random scene in chapter 7 with the guy trying to hit on her because he thought she looked like someone, coming back here with like, yes, it was Kyoshi's mother who this guy had met previously at Madame Kiji's. That's why he thought Kyoshi looked like her, because Kyoshi has freckles, Kyoshi's tall. The serpent tattoos and stuff like that are being mentioned, and Kyoshi remembers those about her mother, confirming to us that back then she didn't want to talk about her mother, so that's why she attacked that guy. Really great connections. But yeah, they're my thoughts on this chapter. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this one, the introduction to these Dao Fei members here that are going to be part of Kyoshi's team. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.